The Galactic Council had kept peace for 3,000 years. They were proud of this fact. Every species in the galaxy knew the Council's rules. No wars, no invasions. All problems would be solved with words, not weapons. Was a junior commander on the Council survey ship called Eternal Harmony. She was young for her species, only 80 years old. Her people lived for 500 years, so she was still considered a beginner. Her job was simple. She watched screens, wrote reports, and followed orders. On this day, her job changed forever. The ship had traveled to a remote colony world called Seven. A distress signal had come from this planet 3 days ago. The Council thought it was probably pirates or maybe a natural disaster. They sent the Eternal Harmony to check. When the ship came out of hyperspace, was the first to see the planet on her screen. She blinked. She checked her equipment. Then she checked it again. "Sir," she said to her captain, her voice shaking, "something is wrong." The captain, an old creature with 4 arms and tired eyes, walked to her station. He looked at the screen. His face became pale. Seven was burning. Not in some places, everywhere. The entire surface of the planet glowed orange and red. Cities that had held millions of people were now black marks on the ground. Forests that had covered entire continents were ash. The oceans were boiling. "Send down probes," the captain ordered. His voice was barely a whisper. The probes went down to the planet's surface. They sent back images that would never forget. Glass. Everything had been turned to glass. Buildings, roads, trees, and people. 7 million colonists had lived on Seven. Now they were statues of black glass, frozen in their final moments of terror. "Who did this?" asked. "What weapon can do this?" Nobody answered. Nobody knew. The Council held an emergency meeting. Representatives from 100 species gathered in the Great Hall. They watched the recordings from Seven. Many of them could not watch until the end. Some left the room to be sick. "We must form a committee," said the High Speaker, a being made of living crystal. "We must discuss our options. We must consider all possible responses." "How long will that take?" asked Ambassador. He was from Seven. He had been away from his planet when the attack came. His wife and children had not been so lucky. His eyes were red from crying, but his voice was steady with cold anger. "These things take time," the High Speaker said. "Perhaps 6 months for a full review." "6 months," stood up. "6 months while more planets burn. We must follow proper procedure." Wanted to scream. He wanted to grab the High Speaker and shake him, but he knew it would do no good. The Council loved their procedures. They loved their committees. They had forgotten what it meant to fight. While the Council debated, 3 more colonies went silent. The attacks came without warning. Ships appeared from the darkness between galaxies. They did not try to communicate. They did not make demands. They simply destroyed everything and everyone, then moved on. The Council called them the Hollow. Some said the Hollow were a myth, old stories told to scare children, but they were real, and they were hungry. Was reassigned to study the Hollow. She spent weeks watching recordings of their attacks. Their ships were not made of metal. They were organic, like living creatures. They had no windows, no engines that she could understand. They moved through space like fish through water. And they ate. That was the horrible truth. The Hollow consumed everything. Matter, energy, even the light itself. They left nothing behind but glass and silence. "We cannot fight them," the military advisor told the Council. "Our weapons do not work. Our shields do not hold. We have lost 73% of our fleet in 6 weeks. "Then what do we do?" asked the High Speaker. Nobody had an answer. Sat in his quarters that night, staring at a picture of his family. His daughter had been 7 years old. She had loved to dance. Now she was glass. He thought about the old stories. Stories his grandfather had told him. Stories about a species so dangerous that the Council had asked them to leave. Stories about warriors who ended wars not with treaties but with fire. Humans. 200 years ago, humans had been the Council's peacekeepers, but their methods were too extreme, too violent. After they destroyed an entire enemy species in 11 days, the Council politely asked them to go away. The humans agreed. They went back to their solar system and closed the door behind them. The galaxy had been happy to forget them. But there was an old agreement, a promise made when humans first joined the Council. If any member species faced extinction, they could call for human help. The frequency was ancient. It had not been used in 2 centuries. Found the frequency codes in the old archives. His hands shook as he entered them into his communication device. "This is Ambassador of 7, he said into the microphone. "This is a formal request under the old compact. Humanity, we need you, please, we need you." He sent the message and waited. On Earth, in a bunker buried deep beneath the Korean mountains, a light that had been dark for 200 years began to blink. An old soldier named Park opened his eyes. The humans had heard. And they were coming. General Park was 247 years old. He should have been dead long ago. Normal humans lived for about 120 years now, but was not normal. He was a war titan. The military had put machines inside his body. They kept his heart beating. They kept his mind sharp. They made him stronger than any normal man. These machines were expensive. The government only gave them to soldiers who were too valuable to lose. Had earned his machines in blood. He walked through the deep command bunker with slow, careful steps. His joints clicked with each movement. His eyes, gray as storm clouds, looked at the screens on the walls. Each screen showed the same thing. The distress signal from 7, the dying colonies, the hollow swarm spreading across the galaxy. "They are actually asking for help," said Colonel Sara. She was his second in command. At 112 years old, she was considered young for a command position, but she had proven herself in the border wars and trusted her completely. "They had no choice," replied. "Look at the numbers. The Council has lost almost 3/4 of their fleet. Their weapons cannot hurt these creatures. Their shields cannot stop them." Sora nodded. The Council always thought they could talk their way out of any problem. Now they are learning that some enemies do not want to talk. Stood before the main display. It showed Earth and its surrounding space stations. For 200 years, humanity had lived in peace. They had built great cities. They had explored art and science. They had tried to forget what they truly were. But they had not forgotten completely. "Wake the Titans," ordered. Sara pressed a button. Across Earth and its orbital stations, alerts began to sound. In military bases hidden under mountains and oceans, red lights flashed. Doors that had been sealed for generations began to open. In the chambers, the warriors woke up. Private First Class Han was only 23 years old. She had joined the military 1 year ago. Her training was complete, but she had never seen real combat. She was assigned to guard duty at the main facility. When the old soldiers began to wake up, watched with wide eyes. They came out of their pods slowly. Ice fell from their bodies. Steam rose from their skin. Most of them were very old. Their hair was gray or white. Their faces were covered with scars. Some were missing arms or legs replaced with metal parts. But their eyes were the most frightening thing. Those eyes had seen horrors that could not imagine. They were the eyes of people who had done terrible things for the right reasons. "Who are they?" whispered to Sergeant, who stood beside her. "They are the veterans of the Scourge War," answered. His voice was full of respect and fear. 200 years ago, they destroyed an entire species in 11 days. The Council called them monsters. Humanity called them heroes. One of the old soldiers walked past. He was tall and thin, with a long scar running down the left side of his face. He stopped and looked at her. "You are young," he said. His voice was rough, like stones rubbing together. "Yes, sir," replied. She stood up straight and tried to look brave. The old soldier studied her face for a long moment, then he nodded slowly. "You will learn," we all did. He walked away, watched him go. "Why do they look so sad?" she asked Sergeant. The sergeant was quiet for a moment. "Because they remember what we have to become." In the orbital shipyards, lights came on for the first time in 2 centuries. Ships that the galaxy had hoped were destroyed began to power up. Their names were written on their hulls in large letters. The Unforgiving. Mankind's Rage. No Mercy Given. Final Answer. These were not the names of peaceful ships. These were the names of weapons. And now those weapons were waking up. Admiral walked onto the bridge of the flagship Reckoning. She was 160 years old, with silver hair pulled back tight and a face that showed no emotion. She had commanded the human fleet in the border wars. She had made decisions that killed millions of enemies and saved billions of innocents. She did not enjoy war, but she was very good at it. "Status report," she ordered. "All systems coming online," her first officer reported. "Weapons charging, shields at full power. The fleet will be ready to move in 6 hours." "Make it 4 hours," said. "The galaxy is burning. We do not have time to be slow." Back in Deep Command, General spoke to the gathered officers. Old veterans and young soldiers stood side by side, listening to his words. 200 years ago, we left the galaxy because they feared us. They called us monsters. They said we were too violent, too dangerous. So we went home. We put away our weapons. We tried to live in peace. He paused and looked around the room. Now they are begging us to return. The hollow cannot be stopped with words. The hollow cannot be stopped with treaties. The hollow can only be stopped with fire and blood. His eyes were hard as steel. "So we will give them fire. We will give them blood. We will show the galaxy why they used to fear us. And when the hollow are nothing but ash, we will go home again. Because that is what humans do. We carry the weight so others do not have to." The officers saluted as one. The war titans were awake. And the galaxy would tremble. The human fleet came out of hyperspace above 7, and the galaxy remembered why it had feared humanity. 12 dreadnoughts led the formation. Each one was 5 kilometers long, covered in weapons that could crack moons. Behind them came 48 destroyers, fast and deadly. 200 support ships followed, carrying soldiers, supplies, and things that no one wanted to name. At the center of the fleet floated the Reckoning. The flagship was so massive that it had its own gravity. Smaller ships could orbit around it like planets around a star. Its hull was black, marked with old battle scars that no one had bothered to repair. Those scars were badges of honor. The council observers watched from a safe distance. They had sent a small ship to witness the battle. Ambassador was on that ship. He wanted to see the humans fight. He wanted to see them avenge his family. "My God," whispered the council captain, staring at the human fleet. "I thought these ships were destroyed." "No," replied, "just sleeping." The Hollow Armada turned to face this new threat. There were thousands of them. Their organic ships pulsed and twisted, like living things hungry for food. They had just finished consuming another colony. They were still digesting 7 million lives. They did not know what humans were. They were about to learn. On the bridge of the Reckoning, Admiral stood perfectly still. Her silver hair was pulled back tight. Her uniform was perfectly clean. She looked at the enemy on her display screen and felt nothing. Not fear, not anger, only cold purpose. "The Hollow are attempting to communicate," said the communications officer, a young man named. "Let them speak," ordered. The sound that filled the bridge was horrible. It was not one voice but thousands of voices speaking together. Men, women, and children, all dead, all consumed. Now their voices belonged to the Hollow. "We are the Hollow," the voices said. "We consume, we grow, you will feed us, your flesh will become our flesh, your thoughts will become our thoughts. There is no escape. There is only the Hollow." listened until they finished. Her face showed no expression. "This is Admiral of the Terran Defense Force," she replied. Her voice was calm and flat. "You have attacked species under humanity's protection. You have murdered millions of innocent lives. I am giving you one chance. Leave this space. Return to where you came from. Never come back." The Hollow laughed. Thousands of stolen voices laughed with mouths that no longer belonged to them. "You think you can threaten us? We have consumed civilizations older than your species. We have eaten stars. You are nothing but food." Nodded slowly. "Then you have chosen your fate." She turned to her weapons officer. Lieutenant Bay was a quiet man with steady hands. He had joined the military because his grandfather had told him stories about the old wars. Now he sat at his station, ready to make new stories. Lieutenant Bay said, "Wake the sun." The Reckoning carried weapons that the galaxy did not know about. The Council had made treaties banning certain weapons. They had demanded that humanity destroy them. Humanity had smiled and agreed. They had lied. Deep inside the Reckoning, a weapon that had not been used for 200 years began to power up. It was called the Solar Lance. It collected energy and compressed it until it became as hot as the core of a star. Then it released that energy in a single beam. Firing said. The beam that shot from the Reckoning was white and blinding. It crossed the distance between the fleets in less than a second. When it hit the Hollow formation, 300 ships simply stopped existing. They did not explode. They did not burn. They turned into expanding clouds of plasma like morning mist in strong sunlight. The Hollow stopped laughing. "Again," ordered. The second shot cracked a moon that was floating nearby. The third shot cut through the Hollow formation like a knife through water. Ships died by the hundreds. Now the Hollow tried to run. "All ships," commanded, "full pursuit, let none escape." The human destroyers were fast. They chased the fleeing Hollow ships and tore them apart with plasma cannons and missile strikes. The dreadnoughts moved forward slowly, their massive guns firing without stop. On the Council observation ship, watched with tears running down his face. "They are dying," he whispered. "The monsters are finally dying." The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, not a single Hollow ship remained in the system. The space around 7 was filled with debris and cooling plasma. Admiral looked at the destruction and felt no joy. This was not victory. This was just the beginning. "Casualty report," she ordered. "We lost 2 destroyers and 1 support ship," her first officer replied. 47 dead, 112 wounded. 47 humans dead, thousands of Hollow destroyed. By any measure, it was a great victory. But knew the truth. The Hollow they had killed today were just a small part of the whole. Out there in the darkness between galaxies, billions more were waiting. This war had only just begun. "Send a message to Earth," she said. "Tell them the first battle is won. Tell them to prepare for a long war." She looked out at the stars. "And tell them to wake everyone. We are going to need every soldier we have." The galaxy had called for humanity's help. Now they would see what that really meant. The victory at 7 gave the galaxy hope, but hope did not last long. The Hollow were not one fleet. They were a migration. Billions of creatures spreading across the edge of the galaxy like a wave of hungry locusts. For every swarm that humanity destroyed, 2 more appeared from the darkness. The war was not going to be won with a single battle. It would be won planet by planet, system by system, life by life. Captain stood in the ruins of what had once been a beautiful city. The planet was called Prime. Before the Hollow came, 5 million people had lived here. Now most of them were dead or hiding underground. His company held a defensive line across the main street. They had built walls from broken buildings. They had set up gun positions on rooftops. They had done everything they could to prepare. It was not going to be enough. "Here they come," shouted Corporal O from his position. looked through her scope. The hollow ground troops were moving toward them. They did not look like the ships in space. They looked almost human but wrong. Their skin was gray and smooth. They had no eyes, no mouths, no faces at all, just blank heads that turned toward noise and movement. They felt no pain, they knew no fear, they did not stop. All units ordered, open fire. The air filled with the sound of weapons. Plasma bolts and bullets tore into the advancing hollow. Creatures fell by the dozens, but more kept coming, always more. Fired until his rifle overheated. His hands were shaking. He was 20 years old. 3 months ago he had been a student. Now he was fighting monsters. "They just keep coming," he said. His voice was close to breaking. Grabbed his shoulder. She looked into his eyes. Her face was dirty and tired, but her eyes were steady. "Then we keep killing," she said. "That is what humans do. We endure, we survive, we do not give up." Swallowed hard, he reloaded his rifle, he kept fighting. Behind the front lines, Sergeant First Class Shin worked without rest. She was a medic. Her job was to keep soldiers alive long enough to fight again. She had been working for 72 hours straight. Her eyes burned, her hands cramped, but she did not stop. A young soldier was brought to her on a stretcher. He was missing his left arm. The wound was ugly and bleeding badly. "You are going to be okay," told him. She was already working, stopping the bleeding, giving him medicine for the pain. "I cannot fight anymore," the soldier whispered. "I am useless now." Looked at him sharply. "You are alive, that means you are not useless. Stay alive, that is an order." The soldier managed a weak smile. "Yes, Sergeant." Worked until she could not stand anymore. Then she sat down against a wall and closed her eyes, just for a moment. She woke up 2 hours later, covered with a blanket that someone had put over her. On the reckoning, Admiral received reports from across the front lines. The news was not good. 37 human ships had been destroyed. 18,000 soldiers were dead. 100 planets were still under attack. The Council's remaining fleet was too damaged to help. Humanity was fighting alone. "Admiral," said her aide, a young officer named Park, "Council representatives are requesting a meeting. They want to discuss our methods." Raised an eyebrow. "Our methods?" "They are concerned about the level of destruction. They say we are being too aggressive. They want us to show restraint." For a moment, felt something hot rise in her chest. Then she pushed it down. She had learned long ago that anger was a luxury she could not afford. "Tell them this," she said. "They called us because they could not win. They called us because their ships were burning and their people were dying. Now they want us to fight politely." She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars were bright and cold. "We did not ask for this war. The Hollow brought it to us. Now we will end it. We will end it with every weapon we have. We will end it with every soldier we have. And when it is over, we will go home." She turned back to her aide. "Tell the Council to watch and learn, or tell them to get out of our way." Park saluted. "Yes, Admiral." On Prime, the sun was setting. The battle had lasted all day. The streets were filled with bodies, human and hollow alike. Captain stood on a rooftop, looking at what remained of her company. They had started the day with 200 soldiers. Now only 83 were still standing. The rest were dead or too wounded to fight. But the line had held. "We did it," said. He sounded surprised. Shook her head. "We survived today. Tomorrow they will come again, and the day after that. This is not a battle. This is a war, and wars are not won by surviving one day. They are won by surviving every day until the enemy cannot fight anymore." She looked at her exhausted soldiers. They were young and old, scared and brave, weak and strong. They were human. "Get some rest," she ordered. "Tomorrow we fight again." The sun disappeared behind the ruined buildings. The night was long and dark. But morning would come, and humanity would still be standing. The war lasted 3 years. 3 years of burning ships and dying soldiers. 3 years of ruined planets and rescued survivors. 3 years of endless fighting against an enemy that never stopped, never surrendered, never showed mercy. But now it was ending. The human fleet gathered above the hollow. It was not really a planet. It was a living structure, massive and horrible, floating in the darkness between galaxies. It pulsed like a giant heart. Tentacles as thick as mountains reached out into space. The consumed mass of 100 civilizations had built this thing. Today it would die. General Park stood on the bridge of the reckoning beside Admiral. He was 250 years old now. His body was more machine than flesh, but his eyes were still sharp, and his mind was still clear. 200 years, he said quietly. I thought I would die in my sleep. I thought my fighting days were over. Instead, I am here for one more war. Nodded, and after this? Back to sleep, I suppose, until the next time. You think there will be a next time? Smiled sadly. There is always a next time. There is always another enemy, another threat, another cry for help. That is why the galaxy needs us. That is why they will always need us. He looked at the hollow structure. Even from this distance, it was terrifying, beautiful and horrible at the same time. That is our burden, he said, to be the ones who fight when no one else can, to carry the weight so others do not have to. The battle began. Human ships poured fire into the hollow structure. Massive guns tore chunks from its surface. Missiles exploded deep in its flesh. The hollow fought back with everything they had. Ships were destroyed. Soldiers died, but humanity kept pushing forward. Private Han was no longer a private. 3 years of war had made her a lieutenant. 3 years of combat had given her scars on her face and shadows in her eyes. She understood now why the old veterans had looked so sad when they woke up. She led her squad onto a hollow ship. They fought through corridors of living flesh, killing everything that moved. The walls bled when they shot them. The floor tried to swallow their feet. It was like fighting inside a nightmare. Keep moving, shouted. Do not stop, do not think, just fight. Her soldiers followed her. They trusted her completely. She had led them through a dozen battles. She had never left anyone behind. On another ship, Commander led a strike team toward the center of the hollow structure. She was no longer a council officer. She had joined the human forces after 7. She had trained with them, fought with them, bled with them. She was one of them now. Her team carried enough explosives to crack a planet. Their mission was simple: get to the heart of the structure, plant the charges, get out. How much farther? Asked one of her soldiers. Checked her scanner. 1 more kilometer, keep moving. The heart of the hollow was a chamber filled with light. Strange, beautiful light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. In the center floated something that might have been a brain, or a soul, or a god. It pulsed with the voices of every creature the hollow had ever consumed. Millions of voices, billions of voices, all crying out in eternal silence. Plant the charges, ordered. Her team worked quickly. They placed explosives on the walls, the floor, the ceiling. They covered every surface with enough power to turn this entire structure into dust. When they finished, stood before the glowing heart, she thought about her crew on the Eternal Harmony. She thought about the colonists of 7. She thought about every person who had died because the hollow were hungry. For everyone you took, she whispered, this is for them. She pressed the detonation button. The explosion was visible from 1,000 kilometers away. The hollow structure shook. Cracks appeared across its surface. The tentacles stopped moving. The pulsing stopped. And then it died. The hollow died screaming. Millions of stolen voices crying out as the creatures that held them finally ended. It was a horrible sound, a beautiful sound, the sound of victory. On the reckoning, Admiral watched the structure collapse into itself. It is over, she said. Around her, the bridge crew was silent. Some were crying. Some were too tired to feel anything. They had fought for 3 years. They had lost friends and family. They had done terrible things. But they had won. The galaxy celebrated. Every species held parades. Every planet held festivals. Songs were written about humanity's bravery. Statues were built to honor the fallen. The council made speeches. They promised to never forget humanity's sacrifice. They promised eternal friendship and alliance. Humanity smiled politely. They had heard such promises before. Then they went home. In the deep command bunker, General Park spoke to the assembled soldiers one final time. Veterans and young warriors stood together, listening to his words. "They will forget," he said. "They always do. They will tell themselves we are too violent, too dangerous. They will convince themselves they do not need us. They will write us out of their history books. They will pretend we were never there." He paused and looked at the faces around him. "And then someday another signal will come, another enemy they cannot face, another war they cannot win, and they will call for us again." He smiled. It was a sad smile, but also proud. "And we will answer, because that is what humans do. We protect those who fear us. We fight for those who forget us. We carry the weight of the galaxy on our shoulders so they can live in peace." The veterans began to walk toward the chambers. They would sleep again. They would wait again. Lieutenant Han watched them go. She was not going to sleep. Someone had to keep watch. Someone had to be ready. "Will they really forget?" she asked General. The old soldier nodded slowly. "Yes, they will forget, but that is okay. We do not fight for their thanks. We do not fight for their memory. We fight because someone has to. We fight because we can." He put a hand on her shoulder. "Rest now, Lieutenant. You have earned it, but stay ready. The signal will come again. It always does." He walked away. Stood alone in the empty bunker. The lights dimmed. The machines hummed quietly. Somewhere in the galaxy, beings who had once feared humanity were celebrating their freedom. They were laughing and dancing and forgetting. And on Earth, in a bunker beneath the mountains, humanity waited. Ready to answer the next call. Ready to fight the next war. Ready to carry the weight once more. The end.